Throughout human history, there are certain names that do not merely change a country, they change the direction of an entire age. And sometimes, even before such people are born, the world seems to be waiting for them. In the 6th century BC, in the lands we now know as Iran, the nights felt different. The wind moved slowly through the mountains, while fires burned in distant cities. Kings sat upon their thrones when armies guarded the borders. But beneath all that silence, there was an invisible tension, because the East was about to change. At that time, the most powerful state in the region was the Median Empire. For years, this empire had kept surrounding peoples under its control. From the mountains to the plains, Median soldiers were everywhere. And at the center of this power sat one man, Astyages. Astyages was not an ordinary king. People spoke his name with fear, because in those days, a king's power did not come only from his army. It came from the fear he created in people's minds. And Astyages understood that fear well. But like many powerful rulers in history, his greatest enemy was not the armies outside the palace, it was his own mind. Because power does not bring peace. On the contrary, it makes a person more paranoid with every passing day. Astyages could feel it. At every feast, every ceremony, every applause, the same question kept growing inside him. One day, will someone take my throne? And then the night arrived that would change everything. The night, the palace was silent. As torchlight trembled across the stone walls, Astyages slept. And then he saw the dream. His daughter Mandane stood in the center of the palace, and from her body, a giant vine began to grow. But this was no ordinary vine. It kept expanding endlessly, passing over city, crossing mountains, stretching across rivers, until at last it covered all of Asia. Astyages awoke in terror. Because in the ancient world, dreams were never considered just dreams. They were seen as messages from the gods. When morning came, the oldest magi of the palace was summoned. A silent hall and the heavy scent of incense, and a king waiting in fear. For a long time, the magi said nothing, because sometimes even speaking the truth is dangerous. But finally, one of them stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the child your daughter will bear will one day rule in your place." And in that moment, the atmosphere inside the palace changed, because this was no longer just a dream, it was a prophecy. Astyages believed he could escape the prophecy, and like many rulers throughout history, he tried to control fate. Instead of marrying his daughter to a powerful Median noble, he gave her to a member of a smaller Persian dynasty, Cambyses I, because the Persians at that time were a smaller people living under Median dominance. Astyages thought, how could a child born into such a family ever become a threat? But history often rises from the places people underestimate most. The Persians were not yet an empire. They were people of mountains and harsh lands. Life was not easy for them. They were not as wealthy as the Medes, not as magnificent as Babylon, but they were strong, because hardship either breaks people or hardens them. And the Persians had been hardened by years of struggle. No one realized it yet, but the direction of history was already changing in silence. And then a child was born, Cyrus the Great. At first glance, he seemed ordinary, a crying baby, tiny hands, a defenseless body. But sometimes, the people who will change the world arrive in the quietest way possible. And the moment that child was born, the prophecy began breathing once again. Soon after, Astyages had another dream. This time, he saw his grandson sitting upon his throne. And now, fear had taken complete control. Because when fear grows, people stop thinking rationally, they only try to eliminate threats. And Astyages had begun seeing his own grandson as a threat. One night, he summoned one of his most trusted men, Harpagus. Harpagus was a loyal commander. He had fought for the king for many years. But the task given to him that night was different. Astyages looked directly into his eyes and quietly said, "Take the child and kill him." In that moment, deathly silence filled the room, because sometimes the fate of an empire changes with a single sentence. When Harpagus took the baby, for the first time he hesitated, because killing on a battlefield was easy, but what he held in his arms was not an enemy. It was a child, and in that moment, the soldier and the human inside him collided. He thought for a long time, and in the end, he could not carry out the order directly. In the middle of the night, he secretly handed the baby to a shepherd and told him, "No one must know." The shepherd took the child, and so a boy born for a throne began living in the mountains. He saw no gold, no palace, only the wind, the earth, and the harshness of life. But sometimes, great leaders are not raised by palaces. They are shaped by hardship. Years passed, and that baby began to grow. Among the mountains, beneath harsh winds, he was raised as the son of a shepherd. He woke before sunrise, herded animals, walked across rocky lands. His life was difficult, but that was exactly why he was becoming stronger. Because some people are not shaped by comfort, they are shaped by struggle. As Cyrus the Great grew older, the people of the village began noticing something. This boy was different, not only physically, but in the way he behaved. Even while the children played games, others naturally followed him. He made the rules, he made the decisions, and everyone accepted it naturally, as if there was an invisible weight inside him, a sense of leadership. And the most interesting thing was, Cyrus himself did not even realize it. One day, the children were playing again, and as always, Cyrus became the king. He gave the other children roles. Some became soldiers, some became servants. Everything seemed ordinary, until one boy refused to obey his command. Cyrus did not hesitate. He punished him. He was harsh, but decisive. And the problem was this: the boy he punished was the son of an important Median nobleman. The story spread quickly. The nobleman was furious. How could the son of an ordinary shepherd punish his child? It was unacceptable, and soon the matter reached the palace itself. Eventually, the news was brought before Astyages. At first, it seemed unimportant, but the king wanted to see the boy, perhaps out of curiosity, or perhaps because of the fear still living inside him. When Cyrus was brought into the palace, everyone fell silent, because the boy was not afraid. As he walked through the stone hall, he did not lower his head. He did not avoid eye contact. For the son of a shepherd, he was far too calm. Astyages watched him carefully, and in that moment, An old fear awakened inside him once again, because there was something about the child, a posture, a gaze, a presence, as if he had been born to be a king. At last the king spoke. Who raised this child? The questions began to grow. The shepherd was summoned, and under pressure, the truth slowly emerged. The boy was not ordinary at all. He was the grandson the king had once ordered to be killed. Cyrus the Great was alive, and even worse, he was growing stronger with every passing day. For Astyages, this moment was terrifying, because the prophecy he had tried to destroy years ago was now standing before him, breathing, speaking, looking directly into his eyes. Sometimes, a person can feel the exact moment their greatest fear becomes real. That was the moment Astyages was living through. But what frightened him most was not that the boy had survived. It was the way he carried himself, because some people radiate power even as children. Soon after, Astyages learned the truth. The man who had spared the child was Harpagus, and the king did not forgive betrayal. But he did not kill him immediately, because some rulers prefer revenge served slowly, and Astyages prepared a horrifying plan. One day, Harpagus was invited to the palace. A grand feast had been prepared. Music played, wine flowed freely, everything appeared normal. But sometimes, the most horrifying moments happen at the quietest tables. After the meal ended, Astyages looked at him and calmly asked, "Do you know whose flesh you have eaten?" Then the servants brought in the head of a child, the head of Harpagus's son. In that moment, the entire hall fell silent. Harpagus's face did not change. He did not scream, he did not cry, he only stared. Because sometimes, when pain reaches its greatest form, a person cannot even react. But that day, something else was born inside him. Hatred, silent, deep, and destined to grow for years. And Astyages made a mistake without realizing it, because some enemies do not strike immediately. They wait for years. After these events, Cyrus was allowed to return to his true family, and for the first time, he learned his real identity. He was no longer a shepherd's son. He was Persian nobility. But the interesting thing was this: being raised in the mountains had not weakened him. On the contrary, it made him someone who understood how ordinary people lived. And one day, that would separate him from other kings. Because most rulers know only the palace. But Cyrus understood both the palace and the people. When he returned to the Persian lands, everything slowly began to change. Because people started gathering around him. He was not yet a king. He had not yet won great wars. But some leaders are followed even before they wear a crown. And Cyrus was exactly that kind of man. People felt stronger around him, and because of that, something began to form without anyone noticing. Loyalty. But far away, another man was waiting, Harpagus, with the hatred he had carried for years. He silently watched time pass, and now he understood something clearly. There was only one person who could destroy Astyages, the child of the prophecy, Cyrus the Great. And so, the foundations of one of history's greatest rebellions began to take shape. Some acts of revenge do not explode all at once. They grow silently. For years, they continue living inside people, and when the time finally comes, they can destroy even an empire. That was exactly the case for Harpagus. At that banquet in the palace, he had not only lost his son, he had also lost his loyalty. From that moment on, he no longer served Astyages. He was only waiting, because sometimes the most dangerous people are the silent ones. From the outside, the Median Empire still looked powerful. Its armies were large, its cities were wealthy. But inside, cracks had already begun to form. Because great empires are usually not destroyed from the outside, they rot from within. The soldiers were exhausted, the nobles were restless. The people complained about heavy taxes, and most importantly, Astyages now ruled through fear. Fear creates power in the short term, but in the long run, it pushes people away from you. The Persians were still seen as a secondary people living beneath Median rule. But there was something no one had noticed. The Persians were beginning to unite, and at the center of that unity stood one name: Cyrus the Great. Cyrus was no longer a child. The years had changed him. His childhood in the mountains, the harsh life, and learning his true identity had transformed him into a different kind of leader. Because he came from the people, yet also carried royal blood. And when those two things combine, people no longer see a man merely as a ruler. They see him as hope. At night, Persian nobles began meeting in secret. Around small fires, quiet conversations took place, and at every gathering, the same question was asked: will the rule of the Medes last forever? Whenever Cyrus spoke, people listened carefully, because he did not speak like other leaders. He did not speak only about power. He spoke about freedom. And throughout history, few things unite people faster than a sense of hope. One day, a secret message reached Cyrus, the sender, Harpagus. The message was short but powerful. The time has come. Because Harpagus had finally made his decision. The hatred he had carried for years was finally turning into action. And he was one of the most important men inside the Median army, which meant his support could change the fate of a war. Cyrus now faced a choice. Either he would remain silent or answer the call of history. And for some people, such moments are unavoidable because they were never born for an ordinary life. Cyrus rose to his feet, and he spoke to the Persian tribes. We were not born to live as slaves. Those words spread from the mountains to the plains, and for the first time, the Persians truly began feeling like one people. Soon after, Persian banners began to rise. This was no longer simple unrest, it was open rebellion. When Astyages heard the news, he was furious because the child he had once tried to kill was now marching against him with an army. And perhaps worst of all, the prophecy was beginning to come true. The first battles were small, border skirmishes, sudden raids. But quickly, the rebellion grew larger. Cyrus's army was smaller in number. They had fewer weapons, fewer resources, but they possessed something else: belief. Because sometimes, what makes an army powerful is not its numbers. It is what they are fighting for. Astyages still remained confident, because he had not been defeated for years. And like many powerful rulers, he made his greatest mistake. He underestimated his enemy. In his eyes, Cyrus was still only a child. But what he failed to realize was this: some people become most dangerous at the exact moment they are underestimated. At last, the moment arrived that would change the course of the war. Many commanders within the Median army had secretly made contact with Harpagus, and when the battle began, some deliberately retreated, some refused to fight, and others directly joined Cyrus's side. Suddenly, Astyages' army began to collapse because the empire that looked powerful from the outside had already broken apart within. In the final great battle, two men stood against one another. On one side, the old king who had ruled through fear for years, Astyages. On the other side, the young leader born from prophecy, Cyrus the Great. This was not merely a war. It was the collision of the past and the future, and history was about to make its choice. Morning came. As the sun slowly rose, the two armies stared at each other. On one side of the dusty plain, the Median army. On the other, the Persians. The silence felt heavy, because before battle begins, people usually think the same thing. Will I still be alive by tonight? Soldiers gripped their spears tightly, horses moved nervously. Even the wind itself seemed to slow down. And in that moment, history held its breath. Astyages stood before his army. He had seen years of war, won countless victories. But today, there was a different feeling inside him, because the enemy before him was not merely a rebel, it was his own blood. And perhaps because of that, for the first time in his life, he was truly afraid. But his pride would not allow him to admit that fear, because for some rulers, losing the throne is worse than death itself. On the opposite side stood Cyrus the Great. The world still did not fully know his name, but his soldiers were ready to die for him, because what Cyrus inspired in people was not fear, it was trust. And people may fight for leaders they fear, but for leaders they trust, they give their lives. Cyrus looked at his army. The Persians were tired, outnumbered, but there was something in their eyes. Belief. Then, the battle began. The sound of the first collision echoed across the entire plain. Shields crashed together, spears shattered, horses screamed, and suddenly, everything turned into chaos. But even in the middle of battle, some people stand out from the rest. Cyrus was exactly that kind of man, because he did not merely give orders, he fought at the front, and that changed the spirit of his soldiers. Right in the middle of the battle, something unexpected happened. Some units of the Median armies began retreating, some stopped fighting entirely, and others directly joined the Persian side, because the hatred that had remained silent for years had finally surfaced. Harpagus had made his move, and in that moment, Astyages realized something. He had not only lost the war, he had lost his own people. Sometimes, an empire falls slowly, but sometimes it shatters in a single day. As the Median army began collapsing, panic spread everywhere. Soldiers fled, commanders ignored orders, and the power that had seemed invincible for years suddenly looked fragile, because people could now feel it. The future no longer belonged to the Medes. As the battle neared its end, the two men finally looked at each other. On one side, the king of the past. On the other, the king of the future. And this moment was not only political, it was personal. Because the child once marked for death was now destroying his grandfather's empire. Sometimes history forces people to live through the very thing they fear most. And Astyages was experiencing exactly that. At last, Astyages was defeated, removed from the throne. And so, the Median Empire, which had ruled the East for years, collapsed before the Persians. But the interesting thing was this: Cyrus did not have his grandfather executed, because he was different from many rulers. His strength was not only in war, it was in his self-control. After the victory, Persian soldiers gathered around Cyrus, and in that moment, a new era began. The Persians were no longer a people living in the shadows. They were becoming an empire, and this would change the world. Because Cyrus the Great did not merely want to become a king, he wanted to change the boundaries of the world itself. Because in the East, powerful kingdoms still remained. Kingdom of Lydia, Neo-Babylonian Empire, and many more had not yet faced him. But now everyone was saying the same thing. A new king is rising among the Persians, and soon that name would spread across the entire world. Cyrus. The fall of the Median Empire was not merely a change of throne, it was a shock felt across the world, because a state that had seemed powerful for centuries had collapsed unexpectedly, and in its place, a new name was rising: Cyrus the Great. News spread quickly, merchants spoke about him, soldiers spoke about him, even kings listened carefully when his name was mentioned. Because throughout history, there are victories where people become curious not only about the result, but about the person who achieved it. And everyone was asking the same question: who is this Persian king? In the West, in the lands we now call Anatolia, another king ruled, Croesus, and his name had become synonymous with wealth. Because the kingdom of Lydia possessed immense riches, gold mines, trade routes, wealthy cities. Everything was under his control. Even today, stories are still told comparing people to the wealth of Croesus. But throughout history, wealth can make a person feel powerful. And sometimes, that feeling is dangerous. When Croesus heard about the rise of Cyrus, he became concerned, because powerful rulers do not like new powers emerging. So before going to war, he sought signs from the gods. He consulted one of the most famous oracles of the ancient world, the Oracle of Delphi. And the answer he received was this: if you attack the Persians, a great empire will fall. When Croesus heard this, he smiled, because he believed the empire that would fall was Persia. But sometimes, people do not truly hear prophecies, they only hear what they want to hear. And finally, war began. Croesus gathered his army. The Lydians were powerful, experienced, and especially famous for their cavalry. Many believed the Persians could not win this war, because Cyrus's rise had been so sudden. And people often believe that powers which rise quickly will also fall quickly. But there was something they did not understand. Cyrus was not only brave, he was extraordinarily intelligent. Many kings simply fight wars, but some leaders try to understand war itself. Cyrus was exactly that kind of man. He was not focused only on strength. He studied his enemy, how they thought, why they acted, where they would make mistakes. That is why his wars were never only battles of strength, they were battles of the mind. The two armies met near Cappadocia. The battle lasted for hours, and by the end of the day, there was no clear victor. Croesus saw this as an advantage. Because winter was approaching, he decided to withdraw his army. His plan was simple. He would return in spring with a much larger force. But this was where he made his greatest mistake, because he still did not understand how different Cyrus truly was. Most kings waited when winter arrived, but Cyrus did not wait. Because sometimes in war, the strongest move is doing the unexpected. The Persian army kept advancing without stopping. Rain, mud, cold, none of it stopped them. And before the Lydian army could fully regroup, Cyrus was already at their gates. The final battle took place near Sardis. The magnificent capital of Lydia was now in danger. Croesus trusted his army, especially his cavalry. But Cyrus once again thought differently. He placed camels at the front lines because the Lydian horses feared the smell of camels. And when the battle began, that was exactly what happened. The horses panicked. The formations broke apart, and suddenly, the balance of the battle changed. In the end, Croesus was defeated, and the kingdom of Lydia became part of the Persian Empire. This victory did not only bring Cyrus new lands, it gave him something else: reputation. Now people no longer saw him simply as powerful. They saw him as dangerous because he was unpredictable. After this victory, many kings began to fear him, because now everyone realized something. This Persian king was not going to stop. And the most frightening part was this: with every victory, he became even stronger. His army grew, his wealth increased, and more people united around him. Because victory attracts people, and Cyrus had become the center of victory itself. Yet in the east, one of the most magnificent cities in the world still stood, with its massive walls, its immense wealth, and an army believed to be invincible, Babylon. And soon, Cyrus's eyes would turn toward that city, because some people stop after winning one victory, but others cannot stop until they change the world. In the ancient world, some cities were more than cities. They became ideas, and at that time, no city seemed greater than Babylon. People told legends about it: massive walls, endless wealth, temples rising toward the sky, and merchants arriving from every corner of the world. Babylon was not only powerful, it was magnificent. So magnificent that many believed it could never fall. The city's walls were almost legendary. They were said to be so wide that war chariots could ride side by side upon them. Its gates were covered in massive bronze. Its towers stretched toward the heavens. And flowing through the city was the Euphrates River. The river gave Babylon life, while also serving as natural protection. That is why people believed this city cannot be conquered. But throughout history, one of the most dangerous moments is when a power believes itself invincible. At that time, The throne of Babylon belonged to Nabonidus, but a distance had begun forming between him and his people, because Nabonidus had spent long periods away from the city. Some priests disliked him, some nobles no longer trusted him, and most importantly, the people no longer felt the old strength of Babylon. This weakness may not have been visible from the outside, but Cyrus the Great noticed such things, because he did not only study armies, he studied the spirit of people as well. As the Persian army moved toward Babylon, panic slowly began to spread. The city still appeared strong, but the people had heard the name of Cyrus because he was no longer just an ordinary conqueror. Wherever he marched, empires fell. And the most frightening thing was this: every single time he found a way. Many kings trust only their armies, but Cyrus tried to understand people. Before attacking Babylon, he learned about the unrest inside the city, the tensions with the priests, the dissatisfaction of the people, the cracks within the government. And it was here that the reason Cyrus was different became clear, because he did not merely win wars. He drew people to his side. The Babylonian army marched out to stop the Persians before they reached the city. But the result was not what they expected. The Persian army was disciplined, fast, and now highly experienced. Within a short time, the Babylonian forces retreated, and the Persians arrived at the gates of one of the greatest cities in the world. But when you looked upon the walls of Babylon, you immediately understood one thing. This city could not be taken by force. The walls were enormous, the food stores were full, and the city could survive a siege for months. Many commanders would have stopped there, many kings would have waited for years. But Cyrus thought differently, because he always looked where others did not. Flowing through the city was the Euphrates River, one of Babylon's greatest advantages. But Cyrus decided to turn it into a weakness. Persian engineers began working to redirect the river. Canals were dug, water was diverted elsewhere, and as night fell, the level of the Euphrates began to drop. Quietly, slowly, history was changing. Most of the people of Babylon were celebrating a festival that night. Music played, wine flowed freely, because no one believed the city could fall. But at that exact moment, Persian soldiers began entering the city through the lowered waters, silently. The gates were opened, the guards were caught unprepared, and the invincible city of the world fell in a single night. But the truly surprising part was not the conquest itself. It was what happened after, because many kings would have looted the city after such a victory. But Cyrus acted differently. He did not touch the temples. He protected the people. He showed respect to the priests. And within a short time, he was seen not as an invader, but as a liberator. That is why his empire did not grow only through fear. It grew through loyalty. Later, Cyrus allowed many exiled peoples to return to their homelands. Among them were the Jewish people. That is why some consider him one of history's first great leaders of tolerance, and associated with his name is the Cyrus cylinder. Even today, it is remembered as one of the earliest symbols of human rights. Now, the Persian Empire was not merely powerful, it had become enormous. From east to west, the same name was spoken everywhere: Cyrus the Great. And people had begun to understand something. This man was not simply conquering lands. He was changing the order of the world itself. Now, Cyrus the Great was no longer just a king. He had become one of the most powerful men in the world. His empire stretched from mountains to deserts, from rivers to seas. And everywhere he went, the same story was told: the Persian king is coming. But there is an interesting truth in history. Some people cannot stop even when they possess everything, because at that point, it is no longer about victory. It is about destiny. Many rulers would have stopped after taking a city like Babylon. They would celebrate, build palaces, and enjoy their power. But Cyrus was different, because his mind was still looking ahead. There were still regions in the east that had not been fully controlled, especially the warrior tribes living across the steppes of Central Asia. These people did not bow to imperial rule. They lived freely, fought fiercely, and never retreated. That is why Cyrus turned his eyes eastward. One of those peoples was the Massagetae. They were not people of cities. They were children of the steppe. They grew up on horseback, fought with bows, and learned to survive in brutal conditions. Defeating them was far more difficult than conquering walled cities, because steppe warriors did not fight by the rules, and leading the Massagetae was one of the most remarkable women in history, Tomyris. Tomyris was not an ordinary ruler. She was determined, harsh, and deeply respected by her people. At that time, many kings underestimated female rulers, but Tomyris was the kind of leader people underestimated first and feared later. According to some accounts, Cyrus did not want war at first. It is said that he sent Tomyris a marriage proposal, but Tomyris understood it was a political move, because Cyrus's true goal was not finding a wife, it was controlling the steppes, and the proposal was rejected. From that moment on, war became inevitable. Once again, Cyrus chose to use his intelligence. The Massagetae were unfamiliar with wine culture, so the Persians left behind a large camp, food, wine, and tents that appeared abandoned. When the Massagetae warriors arrived, they began celebrating. And at that exact moment, the Persian attack came. Many warriors were killed, others were captured, and among the prisoners was the son of Tomyris. Tomyris' son died in captivity, and from that moment on, this war was no longer political. It became personal. Tomyris sent a message to Cyrus. According to some historians, she said, "If you cannot satisfy your thirst for blood, I will give you blood until you are satisfied." Those words would become one of history's most famous challenges. The final battle was brutal. The steppe warriors fought in ways the Persians were not used to. Rapid attacks, storms of arrows, sudden retreats, and eventually, the moment still debated by historians arrived. Cyrus the Great died. Some say he fell in battle. Others tell different versions of the story. But most sources agree that his end came during the Eastern campaigns. Cyrus died, but what he created did not die. The Achaemenid Empire continued to live on, and within a short time, it became one of the greatest powers in history. The systems he created, his style of rule, and his policies of tolerance continued influencing the world for years. Throughout history, many kings have existed. Many conquered, many killed, but very few were called the Great. Because what truly makes people great is not only the wars they win, it is the impact they leave behind. Cyrus the Great is still remembered today because he did not merely build an empire, he changed the world's understanding of power itself. And sometimes, if a person is still spoken about thousands of years after death, it means they truly changed the course of history. A child was once marked for death because of a prophecy, but he survived. He grew up in the mountains, he rebelled, he destroyed empires, and in the end, he carved his name into history forever. Because some people are not born simply to live, they are born to change history.